Leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond. On Spectrum tonight, the quest to transform Uganda. Is Vision 2040 the cure for the challenge? Uganda continues to grapple with the agenda of transformation, with the main focus being put on how to deal with building the economic muscle of the country to make it a first world country. Many economists say that Uganda is blessed with abundant resources, which, if properly managed, can lead to that desired transformation. The discovery of oil and gas has given Ugandans more hope that the funds needed to catapult the economy forward will soon be available. It is the money from this sector that is anticipated to fund the newly launched $200 billion Vision 2040 plan, which seeks to transform the Ugandan society from a peasant to a modern and prosperous country within just 30 years. The vision identifies what they call flagship projects that will form the foundation of transformation if well executed. Uganda has designed similar interventions in the past, but implementation remained a problem, and other countries who took up the ideas therein have since progressed. Experts say that Uganda must adhere to strict financial and management discipline to be able to achieve its objectives under this vision. They say that the country will also need a dedicated and skilled cadre of human resource, on top of ensuring that the population owns and helps in the implementation process of this vision. And so on Spectrum tonight we ask, what are the major bottlenecks limiting economic growth currently, and does the Vision 2040 holistically deal with these constraints? Our guest tonight, Honorable Dr. Ezra Suruma, Senior Presidential Advisor on Finance and Economic Planning, also former Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, as well as a visiting fellow at the prestigious Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. of the U.S. of America. You're most welcome, Dr. Suruma.
Thank you.
What's your view of Vision 2040, Dr. Suruma?
I think it's an important attempt to give us a direction as a country so that we have some sense of where we're going, where we want to be. And in that sense, I think it's a very important effort by the National Planning Authority.
And what are some of the gaps that it doesn't address?
Well, it's difficult to say what the gaps are until we actually start implementing. I think that the major problem that needs to be addressed is one of employment. I'm not sure how well it deals with the issue of employment, especially among the young people. It acknowledges that the population is a young population, maybe half the population is 15 years or less. And the question of how we put these people to work, I think is a major issue that will continue to be with us for many years to come.
How can you, for instance, do that? Without the Vision 2040, how would you do it if you had to create it?
Well, I think it's clear that capital is a major problem in this country. Access to capital and the cost of capital. And Vision acknowledges that through its work, the business people who have been asked to comment on major problems they face, capital is, I think, the most important problem that they face. So you cannot, in other words, you cannot invest because you don't have capital. And if you don't invest, you don't have any means to employ people. So the hope I have, and I think many of us have, is that we'll find a way of using the oil and gas resource to increase availability of capital and to reduce the cost of capital, and therefore increase investment, and therefore increase employment.
Well, Dr. Suruma, you are at one time managing director of the Uganda Commercial Bank, which later became Stanbic after it was privatized. How would you address the access to capital and cost of capital if you had the buttons at the moment?
I think I would continue to reinforce creation of development banks and even housing finance banks and construction banks through investment in construction construction. If you have, for example, China has a construction bank.
They do.
They have an agricultural bank. So you have specialized institutions which channel capital into key sectors. The construction sector is a very important sector and employs a large number of people, and indeed has been responsible for much of the GDP growth that we've had in the last 25 years. So there's a need to put more money in construction. So creating a construction bank or increasing the capital of Housing Finance Bank would be a very important way to go, so that we have more housing for these young people. And these young people are employed not only in creating those mass structures, but also they can live in them because they need somewhere to live. Many of them don't want to go back to the rural areas, and we need to house them so they live decently. So this is an opening that we could, for example, try. But putting money in more money in development banking so that it's cheaper instead of relying on commercial banks which lend for a short period of time. We need longer term investments. We need cheaper capital to make that possible.
Of course, the construction industry is one of the industries that has many multiplier effects.
Absolutely.
It employs a lot of people.
Absolutely.
On building sites, but it also has offshoots, furnishings, industries, laundering, electricity, and so on. But it also at the moment is one of the main beneficiaries of credit at the moment.
It is, but current maybe foreign credit, because local credit.
Well, locally manufacturing, construction, and export.
Local credit at the cost of minimum perhaps 18% is still too high. And if you are also, if we had mortgages that are cheap enough for people to buy, that would further stimulate that sector. But the mortgages of 16, 18, 20% are impossible. And I think there is likely to be a high failure rate, failure to pay back, which will then also, of course, discourage the industry. So there is a desperate need for cheaper loans, for mortgages, which would stimulate further the construction industry and will have a huge multiplier effect. I know many people are impressed by the construction in Kampala and other towns, but we need much more than that in order to absorb the urbanization that we want to occur, so that we have less people in agriculture and in other sectors.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's not that big, the construction level we have here. I've been looking at some figures. In China, they build the equivalent of Rome every 6 months. It's been huge. Some people have complained about ghost cities and so on, but they're investing in the future.
And that's part of the growth that they have, a very important motivation for the growth that they have, motive force behind it. Of course, when you go to China and you see how buildings come up, it's overwhelming. You just come overawed of how such massive construction can be done. I was in Beijing, I think, 2008, just before the Olympics. I was overwhelmed by the magnitude of construction that was going on. And that's the sign of a really dynamic and growing economy. And I hope that more money in this country can be put into construction.
How about mining? Mining is another sector that employs a lot of people. Do we have the right mix of minerals to give that kind of leverage?
I have not studied mining, but I don't know if mining include oil, which is coming soon, I hope. We used to have a fairly large amount of mining activity in the 1950s and early 60s in copper, in Kilembe mines. I remember visiting those areas and looking with amazement at the activity that was going on there. I suspect that when oil starts being mined, we shall see similar types of activity. I'm not sure about what other mining we can undertake that will measure to the extent of construction or oil, but I hope that will also come. Of course, I would say that iron ore is a critical mineral, and we've discovered more and more of it, especially in the covered area, but also, of course, in Tororo. The mining, I think, for the first time, oil should make it possible for us to have the capital to build iron and steel industry, which is a basis for any economy, a very important basis, and that would mean that instead of importing so much of the iron-based products, we can do it at home.
Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. The quest to transform Uganda is Vision 2040, the QRL for the challenges. Our guest tonight, Honorable Dr. Ezra Suruma, Senior Presidential Advisor on Finance and Economic Planning, former Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and a visiting fellow at the prestigious Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C.
Brookings Institution.
Brookings Institute, I thought so too. Well, of course, we have to cut this introduction short. It's a long CV. You've been in different places. You are managing director at UCB, Uganda Commercial Bank.
Yes.
At some stage. Let's look right again at the Vision 2040, looking at it holistically. Where are its bottlenecks, structurally and also in terms of implementation?
But I've mentioned employment as a critical aspect of it. If this succeed, we need to make sure that we carefully, strategically find ways to absorb our young people and also others in gainful employment. That's one. Number two, I've mentioned capital, the need to increase the amount of capital available and to reduce the cost of capital. These are critical areas. You could, of course, go into the health sector, but perhaps before going into health sector, agriculture, where most of our population earn their livelihood. The problem in agriculture has been productivity. We have one of the lowest productivities in agriculture in the world. The growth in agriculture has been very disappointing. Despite many efforts to improve that sector, we have had disappointment after disappointment, strategic and otherwise. And I think that one of the problems, which is now recognized now in the vision, the use of fertilizer, I think we finally come to grips with the fact that we must increase the use of fertilizer in order to increase productivity. It's not been a secret. Many countries discovered it a long time ago. I think the average use of fertilizer in the world is 100 kilograms per hectare. But here, I think it's not even 10 kilograms per hectare, perhaps not even 5. And so our productivity does not measure anywhere near the productivity of the advanced countries. If we want to become an advanced country, we want to become a middle-income country, we must start by making sure that the average producer in Uganda is at par or near par with the rest of the world. The average person in an average household producing at subsistence level is not going to make it possible for us to gain the highest standard of living. When we talk about the highest standard of living, we are talking about the ordinary person in the rural area with a household of 5 or 6 people, scratching 2 acres and attempting to produce as much as possible to eat and hopefully get a surplus for sale to buy the things that they need and pay for medical care and so on. Clearly that's not possible today, not with the 600 or 1,000 kilograms of maize per acre. We will have to do much better than this in order to improve our condition of living. We have to be in the real world, and so the agricultural sector remains central, and the use of fertilizer in the agricultural sector remains critical. And until we resolve that, until we start producing fertilizer and distributing it properly so that everybody has access to it, it's very unlikely that we will see the growth that we want.
Use of fertilizer, some people have thought our soils are fertile enough.
That is rubbish.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't.
They have been depleted. The soils have been depleted.
I mean, the soils, well, maybe in the first, if you break new soil initially, maybe you get 2,000-3,000 kilograms of maize per acre or hectare, whatever. But after a while, you have to put fertilizer. You're taking nutrients out of the soil. You have to put them back. I do not. If you look at the agricultural productivity of countries of the world, you see that we are not anywhere near in the picture. We are in another planet.
We've been talking about the phosphates factory in the east for about 20 years. The Madvanis are supposed to have got a concession many years ago. It's never taken for about 20 years. We've spoken about it.
I think there is a renewed interest and effort by the government to get this factory working. I believe that the President and the Prime Minister and others are putting maximum pressure to see that this factory begins working. And it's definitely high time that this happened. The people of Uganda needed it many years ago, because to bring in fertilizer from outside is very expensive because of transport costs. So we need our own. Luckily, we have large supplies of phosphates, and I think we are the only ones who have this kind of supply in the whole region. So when I was Minister of Finance, we were talking with other finance ministers in the region to find a way of getting together so that we could bring about the capital required, so that we could produce fertilizer not only for Uganda but for the whole region, because the whole region needs fertilizer.
And they need about $450 million for that project, I believe.
It's about in that range, yes.
That's a large amount of money. You might not be able to get it from one.
That's why I was looking at the regional effort, and I think it's a good idea. But with our oil resources, first of all, natural gas becomes another raw material that can be used in fertilizer. The ammonia that comes from it, and so this will, together with the phosphate, this would help us to reduce the inputs needed.
And of course, that would go. Fertilizer would go with the pesticides, the use of pesticides. We don't use a lot of pesticides in our farms.
Yes.
A lot of, well, the central region used to produce a lot of matoke in the past. Now they say matoke comes from the west. It's not a political thing. Explain that to us. Depletion of soil.
I'm not an agriculture expert. I'm not sure why the west is producing so much more matoke and coffee, for that matter. But perhaps because the central region has alternatives.
Maybe they've depleted the soil.
Trade, and I'm not sure. I don't know.
You've not done a study on that.
Study on the soil.
Dr. Suruma, can we implement Vision 2040 and get there with the current levels of corruption?
That's a good question. You're talking about the moral fiber of the society. And it's a very difficult question, because the ability of the population to go forward, the ability of businesses to operate efficiently requires a degree of trust, a degree of being able to depend on your employees to do the right thing and to manage your affairs properly. Not that everything is based entirely on trust. You have to have systems, but there has to be a minimum level of moral integrity on the part of the people. I think that it's not a question of pointing fingers at the government. We have to point fingers at ourselves as a society, because the corruption, I believe, is in various institutions of the country.
You're trying to sound politically correct. You're saying let's not point at government. Government has the resources. They have the buttons. It's up.
No, I'm saying really that it's a national social problem that we have to deal with. That I believe that's a fundamental problem. I believe that during the 1970s there was a breakdown of the moral standards. I believe that during the 1970s, after first of all, beginning with the expulsion of the Asians and handing out free properties to people, and the soldiers and others in government taking over things willingly that they had not worked for, and then others observing what had happened, and everybody attempting to emulate this activity where you can buy here for 1 shilling and sell there for 100 what you bought for 1 shilling.
It's a black market.
A black market, mafuta mingi, culture. They was a tremendous dysfunction in our society, and it never ended. As from 1971 to 85, people grew. Many of us grew up in that culture, and we say locally that you bend a plant when it is still young. If you don't bend it in the right direction when it is young, trying to bend it back when it is old is very difficult. So that foundation was a wrong foundation. That direction in the 70s and 80s was a wrong direction, and many of us have continued to move in that direction, where people look at you as a fool if you don't steal. And we have to change that mentality and realize that in order to earn something, somebody has to work for it. If you are going to eat food, somebody must have grown it. We can't all eat food by manipulating figures on paper. Somebody has to actually work and produce food. Someone has to build a building that is strong enough to live in. When the wind comes, to not blow it down. Otherwise, we all suffer in the end. So there's still an illusion that someone can make a living without working for it. But that illusion will have to end at some point, and all of us become serious. And so we cannot get 2040 with a corrupt society. We have to have a strong law enforcement. We have to have a point where we say no to corruption, and we mean it, and we punish it, so that people will be terrified to commit wrong, and they know that they can't get away with it. So that is the way forward. We can't achieve Vision 2040 if there is corruption in society. If there must be a drastic reduction in corruption.
You've given a good background. It all started with the Idi Amin expulsion of the Asians in August 1972. That went on for at least 15 years before the current government came to power. True, it takes time to change mindsets, but the current government has been in power almost twice as long as the period you just described. Don't you think that's long enough to actually begin to end corruption?
Well, I think what I'm saying is that the society, the people, the mindsets have to change, and the change is not done by the government. The change is done by all of us.
Suppose
the classrooms, the churches, the communities.
Suppose the government is badly corrupt. You want people to come on the streets and overthrow the government?
Okay, so you change them and put other corrupt people. The society. The government comes from the society. Your MPs are there today, they were businessmen yesterday. They are now making the laws. So, if the ones you throw out and ones you bring in are the same, there will not be a change. The society itself must cleanse itself. The whole society. It's easy to point at Suruma and say, Suruma is corrupt, is the problem. Now I'm out of government, so what? The corruption continues.
We build bigger churches.
Build bigger churches.
Is that where we started off?
I don't know. I don't want to point the finger at the church. But I think that you're saying that if we build bigger churches,
give us some formula, because the conventional thinking is that the leaders set the pace. They teach us, they stop stealing, and then the rest of us begin to learn not to steal.
That is true. There's no doubt that leadership at all levels is very important. There's no doubt that example, action speaks louder than words. So you're right. There is a need for leaders in schools, in churches, in government, to show an example of self-denial, an example of self-sacrifice, so that others will follow. But if everybody is aggrandizing himself or themselves, then of course the younger people and those outside will see that the only way out, or the best way out, is to follow those who are leading.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Just stay tuned. We're going for a break. We'll be back. Just stay tuned.
Excuse me, what is this 300 shillings on my bill for?
That is for the tinted candles, madam.
And this 100 shillings?
That is for the air conditioning.
And this 200 shillings?
For the blue walls, ma'am.
I can't believe this!
Why pay for what you don't use or ask for? That's why we at Standard Chartered are introducing the Easy Go account, the first current account of its kind that gives you complete control of your banking charges. For more details, visit a Standard Chartered branch or call 0414-340077.
Would you like to leave me a tip, please?
So I'm chilling at home with my crew. The boys are waiting to watch the game on the telly, but the chicks want to go to the beach. So how do we play it? I glance across the room. Eye contact is made. A plan is hatched. Pete will get some sand. Lots of it. Jeff will take care of the deco, Tim the entertainment, and I the clubs. And so we bring the beach to the apartment. If we can't go to the beach, we bring the beach to us. It's just how we do.
It's not about where you're at. It's the difference you bring. Get a fresh take on things. Club is brewed longer for easier drinking. Brewed slower for great taste. Club, tastefully different. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18.
Sunlight, it's freshness that stays with you all day. Fragrance that lasts.
Try the new range of Sunlight 2-in-1 washing powders for sensational cleaning and all-day fragrance.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight, the quest to transform Uganda is Vision 2040, the QR for the challenge. Our guest tonight is Honorable Dr. Ezra Suruma, Senior Presidential Advisor on Finance and Economic Planning, former Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, a visiting fellow at the prestigious Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. He's also a former Managing Director, Chairman and Managing Director at the time of the Uganda Commercial Bank, now Stanbic Bank. It was the leading bank at the time. It was a government-owned bank. At some stage, you will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Dr. Suruma, is it realistic for this Vision 2040 to depend too heavily on oil?
I think it's not it's not unrealistic. I think oil is a very important event in the life and history of this country. And by comparison, if you look at the role that coffee, first cotton, played in the economy of this country, it was historically a fundamental change. When cotton was introduced as a cash crop, it changed the landscape of the whole economy of Uganda. Then came coffee, and since the 60s and 70s and 80s, coffee has been a major contributor to foreign exchange and has contributed so much to what we are as a country and how we integrate in international trade. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that the coming of of oil will be even greater in terms of transforming the economic landscape. It's inevitable. The resources are large. We are a very lucky country to have water and oil at the same time, and rain. So we are rare in the sense that most of the other countries which have these resources tend to be deserts and so on. For us, we are going to have not only a good agricultural, watered environment, but also oil on top of that. And so the prospect for transformation is absolutely breathtaking. We just have to be smart and to be serious, and we can transform this into the Garden of Eden.
I mean, I was drawing a chart as you spoke about cotton in the 60s, coffee in the 70s. Looking at this, oil belongs to the 2010s. Look at this, we could have lost 30 years. And like the 80s did have a flagship project, the 90s did have a flagship project, the flat 20s did have a flagship project. Are those lost years?
No, they are not lost years. We've learned a great deal on how to reorganize ourselves. If you look at the 50 years since we became independent, the first 25 years are lost years, so to speak, with declining incomes, declining GDP, particularly in the 1970s. Since 1985 or 86, the next 25 years have been years of steady, sustained growth, depending mainly on better organization and political stability. The main difference, in my view, between the first 25 years and the last 25 years is political stability. With political stability, with hope, people can get to serious work, serious planning, to investment, and so you can see the kind of growth that we have seen. The lesson for me in looking at our history is first, make sure we have a stable political, social environment in which people feel safe, in which people are willing to invest, and because they have some assurance that what they invest will be there. If they build a house, they'll be able to live in it. If they create a business, they'll benefit from it. And once they have that confidence, then slowly make other environments that make it possible to invest, such as good roads and cheap enough loans and law and order and enforcement of contracts. Then we'll see this economy booming beyond imagination once you have those basics in place. So political stability is number one. Good governance, we have to continue to struggle to make it even better. I assure you that what we have seen, the growth we have seen in the last 25 years is largely because of an improved political climate. Despite the shortcomings, you cannot compare the environment we've been in with the environment some of us experienced in the 70s and early 80s when we were running for our lives. I went to exile 2 times running for my life. So, if we can continue to improve governance, and we put together then the oil resources and the improved infrastructure and environment, I think the economy will grow enormously.
How would you spend this oil money, Dr. Suruma?
I believe that the expenditure of this money should be a balance between the needs of today, the needs for infrastructure investment, the needs for improving the quality of the population, the needs for fairness, economic justice, people feeling that there's a respect for their needs, both today, for the current generation, and for future generations. I believe that the best way to use oil resources is to say, okay, we put it in a reserve account in the central bank, we invest it in various instruments, the good instruments. That's what the proposed law is saying. The income from these investments should be not only go into infrastructure, it should go into meeting human needs, such as medical insurance, so that every Ugandan can have medical care. It should go into paying for university education, so that more children can go to university education who cannot go now because they can't afford. It should go into meeting the needs of elderly, people who are too old or who are disabled, and they are now left like dogs or animals. They are completely abandoned, so that the value of life of a Ugandan is valued, and he sees that being a Ugandan is something of value to him or to her as a citizen. And then we look at the needs of the future. So the resources from oil not only are kept for the future, but also the current generation's needs are respected, and an attempt is made to meet them. So my quarrel, if you like, with the idea that everything should go into infrastructure is that it's not a balanced argument. I think it's ideologically biased in seeing that value only is in the hardware of roads and railways, and forgetting that at the end of the day, everything we do in the economy is for human welfare. It's so that human beings have a better life today and tomorrow. That's the balance I would want to see in utilization of oil resources.
Well, I think you really have put it very well. Now let's talk about some of the flagship projects of this Vision 2040, a high-tech ICT city with infrastructure, Silicon Valley Flag.
Well, I guess we can leapfrog the technology and get into the modern highest end of it. I have no quarrel with that. If we can do it, we've been trying to industrialize. It has not been easy, and despite our great efforts at industrialization, the service sector has grown faster than any other sector. And so I believe that the economy will have its own logic on how it is going to grow. After all, we continue to be in a free economy in which in a free economy in which investors will make free decisions on where they want to invest. So I believe that the innovations which are occurring in high tech will continue. I see the Americans are revising their GDP to take intangibles into account, the innovations in the internet and so on, which were not easy to put in the GDP. They are now looking at them. So our own structure of the GDP is going to change, and so I hope that we can leapfrog these intermediate stages and get into the modern world of ICT.
We'll talk about leapfrogging some of those development stages. There has been a general observation at very high levels of economic analysts that we've skipped one important development zone. We've moved from agriculture to services and forgotten about manufacturing, industrial output. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, it's a very complicated question. First of all, we investors respond to where they can make money. They put their investments in where they can make money. So if I can make money in communications, in MTN and other communication industries faster, or in banking, you're not telling me that I must put my money in iron ore or in woodworking. I go where I think I'll maximize my profit.
You follow the money.
So I think that many were speaking using models of the 19th century and before, and the world has changed.
Yes.
So I don't think that it is necessary to be so stereotyped. There was a time in economic history where people said that the only sectors that were valuable were mining and agriculture.
Yes.
They are called physiocrats. That time is long gone. They thought that if you produced a piece of music, that was not adding to GDP. That was useless. If you were a good singer, that did not matter. If you are a good artist, that did not matter. But we've long changed from that point of view. A person who creates a piece of music is adding to GDP just as much as one who is cultivating onions or maize. They are all creating values which people are willing to pay for. What determines value is what people want, not what people say or think they should be done.
Some people have spoken about a gross happiness index compared to the gross national product. And so
the gross value index, in the sense that I put my money on what I think is good for me, and that's what the essence of a free economy. We spend where we want, on what we want, and then the industry responds by producing on what we want to spend on. And you can't say, Suruma, you must put your money in copper. I don't want copper.
It doesn't agree with the logic.
It doesn't agree.
Some people have been complaining that young men are selling their plots of land in the villages instead of growing avocados and coming to ride borders. They're jumping from agriculture to the services sector.
Well, I mean, you can preach what you believe in, but I don't have to believe what you preach. So all of us are putting forward in the market of ideas. We put forward what we want, we invest in one thing and people don't buy, we have to leave it and invest in another. So people respond to incentives or what they see as the best way for them to get forward. And in the absence of dictatorship or controlled economy, which we left a long time ago, in the 70s and early 80s, people were trying to tell us what we should spend. You should spend $5 on a beer. And if you said no, they said then you can't have it. But if I want to spend $2, if I want to spend $10, it's up to me. So we left controlling prices. We were saying $1 is 7 shillings. And other people saying no, $1 is 50 shillings. And we tried to enforce that, and there was a lot of misery. So this idea of dictating what is the economy or acting to be omnipotent in terms of what is the right way forward, that is not compatible with the market economy. Even the Chinese agree with that. You can't dictate to the market.
Well, they still control the value of their renminbi.
They try, but they have failed. You can see the remittance value has been changing.
All right, Dr. Suruma, we can't cover all these flagship projects. Let's talk about only three for us. We've spoken about the phosphate industry in the East. Let's talk about the iron ore industry in Mukwa and Kabale. Is that something that you think could happen soon?
That's something that is vital. The iron ore industry is a vital industry, providing steel for the economy. Many of our structures, buildings, railroads, industries require iron and steel. We have very high quality iron in this country. So I hope that now, at last, we can put this iron and steel industry in place. It will be vital, I think, for the economy. I agree with that as a flagship project.
Let's talk about these globally competitive skills development centers. What form would they take?
I don't know. The competition is a critical thing for Uganda. Being a landlocked country, very far from the sea, perhaps competitiveness should be considered in a regional context rather than international context. We found from attempting to export textiles that we could not compete. We could not bring material in from China and stitch it and then send it out again and then compete with the Chinese in New York garments market. We simply couldn't. The cost was too high. So if we are talking about competitiveness,
it should be regional.
It should be regional, and that's another reason why services for Uganda, medical service, educational services, could be, of course, tourism, could be areas where we are more competitive because we don't have to carry things 1,000 miles to the coast.
Well, let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the quest to transform Uganda is Vision 2040, the cure for the challenge. Our guest is Dr. Ezra Suruma. Very long CV he has. Our number is 041-434-8111, 031-226-0390, 031-226-1390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. There is movement already on two fronts. They have spoken about a nuclear, hydropower plants. Ayago, Simba, Karuma, and Machizon. We've seen movements on the Ayago plant. We've seen movement, I think they signed a $600 million, 600 megawatt plant, $450 million, $1.2 billion agreement on that. Karuma is supposed to be moving, Simba is supposed to be moving, I think 450 megawatts. So very shortly we shall have overcome power shortages. Do you have that optimism? 3 years will have enough electricity?
I very much hope so.
Perhaps let me interrupt you there. Let's hear from one of our listeners. Spectrum, hello. Hello. Yes, sir, your name? Yes, Richard. Hello. Good evening, sir. Your name? Yes, Martin.
My question is Dr. Suruma. When I'm coming to Vision 2040, is the vision for Uganda country? What's the vision for the Central Republic, the Central State of the East African Place of the What's up here? Uganda and East Africans have been thrown all around Africa and the East African Place of Protection. What's up here? The government of the same way. And it's not confirmation to the longer election. Secondly, when let us look at the reality of the 2040 vision, is not another matter.
hello. Hello. Okay, hello. All right, you can still call back in. Spectrum, hello. Our number 0414-348-111, 031-2260-390, 031-2261-390. Let's get back to the studio. Okay, Spectrum, hello. Hello. Yes, your name? Yes, Clay. Ezra Suruma. Is that pessimism? Is that realism?
I think perhaps a bit of both. Perhaps more on the pessimistic side. Should I start at the bottom or start at the top?
Whatever you choose to start, sir.
Yeah. Richard was concerned with high profile corruption. He mentioned Sajabaravan and said, what can the citizen do in the face of this high level, high profile corruption? I think that in my view, we should not underestimate the will of the people and the views of the people and the anger of the people and the opinions of the people and the ideas of what people say and think. We have seen that change comes about because people express their disagreements, they express what they want and what they don't want. And I am not going to be pessimistic that because someone has stolen money, that therefore we are down, we are finished, there's nothing we can do. It's very important to speak out. Of course, there is sometimes a price when you speak out, but there has not been any advance in any country without sacrifice. And I believe that it is the duty of citizens to continue to voice their feelings about what they like, what they don't like, and this is how we can bring about change. If everybody fears to speak and we all keep quiet, of course the evils will continue. But in order for us to remove these evils, we have to denounce them, we have to speak out, we have to debate, and people have to fear. People have to know that even if they are committing a wrong, they are likely to be found out, and there is going to be a price to pay. That's how we contribute to cleaning up our society and improving our society. But there has to be some degree of sacrifice, and this is not only here but in every country. Even in a country like the USA, there is corruption, but people speak out against it, and a great deal of anger is expressed.
Structural corruption.
Sorry?
Is that structural corruption? Is it at high levels in government?
I don't know at what level. I think that's at various levels. Some of it we see, and some we don't see. But the point is that the population must keep speaking out and not get cowed and not give in. And this constitutes pressure. So that when you do wrong, there will be pressure and you will feel it. And therefore, by doing this, you contribute to improving the country. You may not see the direct result of your anger of a letter you wrote to the paper, but I can assure you that cumulatively it has a lot of effect, and people should not despair.
Political federation, Martin?
Political federation, I didn't quite the question very clearly, but I think that the federation and the vision, they all have to be put in context. I was secretary for the committee, East African Committee for Accelerating Political Federation in 2004. And it's true that we have not attained the hopes we had for a quick political federation.
2015 was the original target. We can't get there.
But I think what is important is that the markets have continued to be integrated, that the trading we have with each other has continued to grow. So the main benefits of federation are access to bigger markets and hopefully movement, freer movement. This is what is really important, rather than the fact that we have one president. To me, if we can struggle harder for unity, for example, in the development of Lake Victoria, which unites all of us, a common body of water, then integration will continue to occur in steps.
All right, our time is almost up, but let's talk about the last caller who said we need 70 years in his own estimation.
But Martin wanted to know what miracle will occur in the next 40 years or 30 years that has not occurred in the last 50 years. I think we talked about oil as being one, and I think if we can maintain political stability, that will also contribute.
Let's talk about the 70 years.
70 years, I think he's being perhaps too pessimistic. I would like to think that indeed we can learn from what Malaysia has done in other countries and do a better job than what he anticipated.
In 27 years.
Yes.
The government has been in power 27 years. Now they say they'll do all this in another 27 years. You think we've got the momentum?
I think it means that we have learned a lot and now we can do better.
Dr. Suruma, finally, just before we go, when was the last time you advised the president, your senior presidential advisor?
Well, the advice is it's not only face-to-face. When I write to him a letter, that is advice. When I take part in something he has commanded, that's advice.
Even now you just advise him if you are...
Even now, if he hears what I've said, that's also advice.
Face-to-face, that's a different matter.
Yes.
We have to go. Thank you very much indeed, Honorable Dr. Ezra Suruma, one of the foremost brains on the economic matters in this country, senior presidential advisor on finance and economic planning, former minister for finance, planning and economic development, visiting fellow at the prestigious Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C., also a former managing director for the Uganda Commercial Bank, which later became Stanbic, after being privatized. Thank you for coming to Spectrum tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. So Spectrum will be back tomorrow. Up next is the news in English.
Come out, wherever you are, from the rolling hills to the valley's end. Follow me, pretty girls, to